the midwife texts us right before we get there. She's like, hey, call me when you get here. Do not ring the doorbell. Do not come in. Like, okay, this is weird. And she comes out. They'd had a group of teenagers had gotten into the birth center and vandalized it.
What? Hi, I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 5 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm going to try and sound a lot more awake than I am. I was getting ready for bed and getting ready to go to bed and realized that I never recorded an intro for this week's episode. So here I am. After a long weekend, but a great weekend, we went to visit our friends in Holly Springs, some of our best friends who live there, and spent the weekend with them and their 4 kids. Our kids did a VBS together through their church, and then we got to go to church with them on Sunday, and it was just wonderful. It was a great weekend. Then I came home to teach the 3rd class of my childbirth class for this summer, which has been great. Been loving getting to know the couples in that class. It's been wonderful. I was getting ready for bed after all that, and I'm pretty wiped. I did want to mention, though, our next childbirth class I am taking registrations for right now. So our next in-person class is going to be in October, every Sunday evening in October, and the first Sunday evening in November here in Kernersville in the Triad. So if you have a baby due in the winter time, so December, January, February, maybe even early March, that is going to be the class for you. It is our group childbirth class here in person, and it's awesome. So you should sign up for it. And if you know someone who's pregnant and due with a winter baby, you should point them straight to this class. Now, if for some reason Sunday nights don't work for you, or you don't live in the Triad, or for whatever reason, it's just that one's not going to fit your life and your schedule, that is why we have an online on-demand course. It's the same exact course, the same exact content. Everything is exactly the same. It's just from the comfort of your own home at your own pace. So that is also an option, and that's an option you can take advantage of right now. You don't have to wait till October. So in the episode show notes every week, you can click down to take the online course. You can also click to get in touch with me if you would like to come take our in-person class this fall in October. Let's go ahead and get you signed up. All right, let's jump into this week's episode. We're told first labors can be long, and on average, the first labor, left undisturbed, is roughly 25 hours long. But can you mentally prepare yourself for a 70-hour labor? That was Mary Kathryn's experience, and I know it's been the experience of many other first-time moms out there. Making sure you have a solid care team around you, from your husband to your doula to your midwife, can make such a huge difference in your experiences, as Mary Kathryn found out in her 2nd and 3rd labors, that thankfully were not 70 hours long. Join us today as she recounts her 3 birth stories and the little answered prayers God gave her and her husband along the way. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Mary Kathryn with me today. Mary Kathryn, why don't you just take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us about your life, who you are, and help us to get to know you.
Yeah, I'm Mary Kathryn. We live just outside of the Atlanta area. Wife to Andrew. I'm mama to 3 little girls, Liesel, Everly, and Ellie Joy. I love to run and do puzzles, and I really enjoy doing Bible study at my church with the women there.
Cool. Did you love to run before you had kids, or was that something you took up after?
Before I had kids, I'm much less of a runner now, but because running with a stroller is much less fun. But I enjoy it when I get to it.
I agree. I agree. I had a short stint of my life where I was a runner. It was after I had my first, and I was just like, wow, I can't just go to the gym whenever or go take dance class whenever. I've got to figure out something close by and free. And so running became it, and I hated it at first, but then I got better and then eventually did like a half marathon. My best friend convinced me to do that. And after a few years, I did that. It was all going well. I was training for a full marathon, and then I injured myself, and I'm just a walker ever since then.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels between running and birth. Of just like it can feel really hard in the moment, but the endorphin rush, like that runner's high,
Uh-huh.
kind of like towards the end, and like when you finish something, feels a lot like birth to me.
And then you're sore after. But yes,
Uh,
both situations. That's funny that you say that because I talk about that. And I think in my second birth story, I had already run a half marathon before I had my second. And at that point, I thought the half marathon was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And when I was having my second, I was like in the tub, like in transition and thinking, I'd rather be running that half marathon right now. Like, please just get me out of this. Like, so you live and you learn. Now having 3 other births since him, I'd rather give birth than run a half marathon. So it changes.
it does. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's dive into your births then.
Okay.
So, did you say how long you've been married?
I've been married for 11 years. 11 years.
11 years. Lovely. And how old's your oldest?
She is 7.5. Have to say the half because it's important.
Because she will correct you otherwise.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, well, then take us back to what sounds like around 8 years ago or so, a few years into marriage. Tell us the story. Tell us the story of how you got pregnant. What was it like finding out? What was that journey like?
Yeah. I always joke, like people asked us, like, were you trying? And I would joke, it depends on which one of us you asked. And it's kind of true. He thought we were. I didn't think we were, which is kind of weird, but I wasn't like opposed to it, but I didn't think we were like really trying. And so he was out of town actually when I found out. He was at a retreat with a group of guys that he led in a D group. And I don't know why I took a test when he was out of town, but I did. And he was gone for like the next 36 hours.
So
And
you had to
so,
keep it all to yourself?
yeah. And so it was this really weird, I was kind of in disbelief. I took multiple tests because I was like, is this really true? And it was true. Um, I think for a while afterwards, it took a minute to sink in because I couldn't really talk about it right away. But I went to Marshall's and bought this cute little like baby onesie and wrapped it up and put it on his pillow. And he got home really late at night from the retreat and he comes home and opens it. And if he could do backflips, he would have done backflips. And it was a really sweet surprise for him. And it was really fun to see because he was not expecting that at all. So
Yeah.
just kind of to see his just genuine excitement and surprise.
Oh, that's so fun when the dads get all hyped, even more so than the moms.
Yeah.
So you guys were pregnant somewhat unexpectedly, but also kind of expected. Um, and how did you go about seeking care for your pregnancy? Like, who did you go to as your provider? What birth thoughts or plans or visions did you have?
I wanted an unmedicated birth. My mom had had unmedicated births, and I can do this. And I had been going to an OB practice in the area and had multiple friends there. Some of them had had unmedicated births, others hadn't, but just kind of was like, yeah, seems like that works. A freestanding birth center had just opened up in Atlanta. And we did go tour that and look at that and consider that as an option. But we ended up going with the OB practice because insurance covered a higher portion of that.
Mm.
surprisingly. It'd be a lot cheaper for them to cover the birth
I
center,
know. Those insurance
um,
companies do not understand.
but yeah, the hospital was 5 minutes from us. The birth center could be up to an hour with traffic. And my husband's, to this day, his greatest fear is having a child in an unplanned location. So he really liked the 5 minute option. So we did that. I took a course kind of on unmedicated birth. It was really thorough. Thought I was well educated and had like a good idea of what was going to happen. We wanted a doula at a hospital, but we, again, kind of finances, we looked for a doula that was earlier on in her career and didn't have quite as much experience, which, I mean, she was good, but I think looking back, I kind of wish I think things might have gone differently if we had had somebody with more experience.
Mm.
And I think probably could have paid for it, but it was just not what we decided to do in that moment. But yeah, so that's how I put my team together.
Well, it's your first time and you don't know what you don't know. And
Yes.
that plays a lot into living and learning and doing things differently the second time around.
Yes.
So, how did the pregnancy go overall?
I loved being pregnant with my first. It was relatively easy. I had a few aversions, felt really good. I ran until like 36-ish weeks. So I
Nice.
ran for a long time. I had a lot of the SPD pain,
Mm.
and I never said anything to my providers because I was nervous they were going to tell me to stop running.
Oh,
But I have learned that you can have pregnancies without that.
yeah.
So that was kind of my biggest issue of, when I would roll over at night, that would just be really irritating.
Hmm.
We had a little scare in her ultrasound because we didn't do any genetic testing and they saw something that could have signaled some genetic disorders, but that ended up resolving. And it turns out that we have since learned that that thing resolves 99.8% of the time.
Oh, wow.
And so they told us on this like 0.2% of a chance that like she would have had something. It's like, well, I don't know. It's not worth it to a first time parent. So that
Maybe
was a
not.
little
Maybe
bit,
let's just wait and see.
yeah, yeah. So that was a little bit nerve wracking, but everything ended up fine.
Yeah,
And it was a relatively easy pregnancy. So
that's great. So then take us to the end of the pregnancy. Did anything happen near the end? Did you end up going into labor on your own? Like, how far along were you?
so I started having contractions around midnight on my due date.
Oh, nice. How predictable.
Yeah, it was like clock struck midnight and they started coming like 15 to 20 minutes apart. And that was a Monday. My husband at the time, he was in grad school and he had classes on Mondays and Wednesdays. And so he was not at work, he was at home and he had a test that afternoon. Um, so it was kind of just all day. Am I like in labor? Is this prodromal labor? What is this? Contractions weren't that close together at that time. I didn't feel like it was that intense. And so I went down to the campus with him and sat there while he took his test, in a little like lobby area outside his classroom. And he's a very slow test taker. But that test he took very quickly. And he even at one point had to go to the bathroom and came out and was like, "Are you okay?" And like, I'm good. Went back and finished his test. That whole day just had sporadic contractions, but fairly consistent, but never really closer than 15 or so minutes. And so thought it was prodromal labor, go to bed that night, wake up again with even closer together. Like, oh, okay, maybe this is it. And we got really close to the 411 rule of 4 minutes apart, 1 minute long, 1 hour.
Hmm.
And we got, super close to that at maybe 8 a.m. or so the next day. So Tuesday morning. And then they just completely stalled.
Mm.
No, like nothing for
Like they
a
stopped
couple hours.
altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I was like, what in the world? I've been having contractions for several hours. Like, what's going on? We had already called my mom. My mom lives about 7 hours away and kind of told her like, hey, we're getting close to, because we were close to the 411, like about to call the midwife and talk to her about going into the hospital. And so she was already driving up and thinking that, oh, we might have a baby before she gets here.
Something tells me she made it in plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Yeah. I had my 40-week appointment that day around 1 p.m. So we get there. By this time, contractions have kind of picked back up. Until I'm like, hey, I've been having regular contractions. Maybe I'm in labor. They hook me up to the monitor for, I think, like a non-stress test. And
Mhm.
I'm sitting on the monitor and we're watching, and contractions are coming I think by the end, every 2 to 3 minutes. But it's still like, this feels like I feel fine. Like, this feels really weird. And so they asked me, do you want us to check you? And so, yeah, I fit 2 centimeters. It's like, okay. She's like, but you're 90% effaced or something like that. She's like, I'm going to guess, like, you go walk for an hour and like, you'll be ready. We go up to triage and
So you didn't go home after that?
We did not go home. That was kind of like our one big regret in this labor was
You went straight
we
to the
wished,
hospital.
well, because my OB practice was at the hospital.
Oh, so you're just already there.
We were already there. It was, a 2-minute walk to triage from their office. And so we did that. We're like, I mean, if it's only going to be why would we go home for an hour? We didn't know.
It's only going to be an hour.
Yeah. So go to triage and walk around for an hour, and it's this little horseshoe loop. And that was a really hard hour. My husband, he's a wonderful birth partner. He is very nervous about passing out. And so he passed out in our birth class. And so
Wait, like just talking about birthy stuff?
Yeah, he's like medical stuff does not go well with him.
Okay.
Like, it makes him a little bit lightheaded. And what I didn't know, so I'm like walking this horseshoe, and he would stop and sit when he would see a chair and wait for me to come back to him. And I didn't know it at this point that he was feeling really lightheaded and really nervous that he was going to pass out.
Wow. And we're just in early labor at this point.
He has never passed out. Like, he did great, but I think he was really nervous. A lot of anxiety in this moment.
Yeah.
But just mentally, that was such a hard hour. I felt like I walked this hallway 100 times. I felt so exposed, felt really nervous to show if I was having a contraction, and would just kind of try to keep walking through it. Looking back, like, I would very much tense up and just like, I'm just going to push through this. And just, alone, angry, get back to triage after an hour, and had probably the most painful event of the labor. And that was a cervical check again at this point.
Oh.
And the cervical check felt like it took an eternity. It was so painful. And I was still at 2 centimeters. It was just like crushing at this point. Of like, I've been having contractions for over 24 hours. I knew labor could be long, but never expected it to be so many hours of contractions without really any movement.
Progress. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think I'd gotten checked at 36 weeks and was like a centimeter or a centimeter and a half. So like, there really had been no progress since then.
Yeah. Did they send you home at that point?
So at that point, we did opt to go home.
Okay, good.
And we said, we're going to go home. And when we got there, my mom was there. And so that was just such a huge gift from the Lord in that moment. Andrew was able to go take a nap. My mom made me some food, and she and I sat and watched Finding Nemo together. And then was able to get in the bath and just try to relax, and thinking like, okay, we're just going to be here for the night. And right around 12 a.m., 11 p.m.
Everything picked up again.
It picked back up again. And this time it was much more intense, like felt really painful. And eventually figured out that it was back labor. You can see where this is going, but I have no idea at this point.
I'm like, yeah, I can see right where this is going.
Yes.
Was your doula there yet? Had you been in contact with her?
Andrew had been texting her. I had not been.
Okay.
I think we were probably at the hospital before I was able to articulate, I feel this in my back.
Yeah.
Because I think for a little while I was trying to just figure out what I was feeling. It was all so new and kind of overwhelming. Anyways, we get back to triage, wait for a room for quite some time. And I'm just really exhausted at this point. It's midnight again. I haven't slept great. And so we talked to our nurse about what options for sleep would be. And they recommended fentanyl, which looking back is a really weird option.
Like in an IV, narcotic wise? Yeah.
Yes. And even my midwife, I had a meeting with her after the birth, the midwife who delivered my baby, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure why they offered you fentanyl. Like, I wouldn't recommend that, but that's what I had."
So at that point you got admitted. Like,
Yes,
so were you like a 4 or
I was
something?
4. Yes, I was
Okay.
right at 4. So
That's their bare minimum requirement.
yeah, yes, I was at 4. Yeah, we had to wait in triage for probably an hour and a half for a room,
Yeah.
and had fentanyl, was able to get some sleep, and ended up doing a second dose to try to get a little more sleep. And that got us to like 5 a.m. And then I feel like the contractions came back like a freight train. There
When
was
it wore
no like
off. Yeah.
gradual ramp up. It was just like full on. And that's when it was like, this is real. It was really intense back labor. And I could feel the contractions on my front, and those would come and go. But in my back, it was just constant.
Mm.
And so we had a rice sock on my back, like hot.
Mm-hmm.
I think my doula massaged my back for probably 4 hours straight.
Mm.
It was a lot. Got checked again at 8 a.m. It was about 6 centimeters, all the back labor. 11 a.m. I'm 6.5. So it's
Oh,
just like not going anywhere.
yeah.
And trying to change positions, trying to move around. I was pretty adverse to the idea of water, and I don't know why.
Hmm.
But the idea of getting in the tub or the shower just felt
Wrong.
like, I don't know. It just felt, I just kept saying no, and I'm not really sure why. And so probably around 11 a.m., I was just miserable at this point and talked to my husband. We had all of our little secret meetings in the bathroom, so kind of away from everyone.
That's where I send my
Um,
clients when I need them to have a secret meeting. I'm like, why don't you go in here? Go to the bathroom. I'm going to close the door. You guys are totally private now. You can say anything you want.
yeah. So we did that, and we at that point decided that we'd go for an epidural. I was so tired.
Yeah.
Nothing was providing relief in my back, and we were getting nervous that if I didn't have rest, like would I be able to push? Like would I have the stamina to push when it came time for that?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really really hard decision, and some of it was realizing that there was pride in wanting an unmedicated birth, of feeling like I was strong enough or good enough to do that. And I think people, and kind of the expectations of others, people had said, "Oh, you're in such good shape, you can do it," kind of all these comments. And so right after we made that decision, I was leaning over the birth ball, and the song Cornerstone came on my playlist. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a song that we sang at our wedding.
Oh.
And just like face to face, we're both just like crying about the sadness of that decision, but also just the peace that like Christ is our foundation, and that's unshakable despite our circumstances. And that was, yeah, just a really sweet, tender moment that we had. And got the epidural, and immediately the tone of the room changed from
Yeah.
just like misery to joy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of what we talked about, of not wanting to remember the day of our child's birth being miserable. Like we wanted it, that's not what we wanted if we could help it.
Yeah.
And so then they broke my water. So that's about noon that all of that happens. And about 6:37, they check me again. I'm at a 9. Okay, it's great.
Getting
Like
closer.
probably having a baby soon. Jokes on me. uh, it was probably like 8:30 or 9 before we started, like before I was 10 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
And I start pushing, and the midwife who was in there, who was amazing, like the midwife, she was a believer as well. And she was praying with us and gave us as much time as we needed. We're so thankful for her. Because I think now, looking what I've learned is several of the other providers in that practice, I think I might would have ended up in a C-section for failure to progress. But she was like, "No, you're fine. Your vitals are fine. Babies are fine." Like,
Keep going.
yep. Anyways, as I'm pushing, she's like, "Oh, baby, sunny side up."
Which explains all the back labor and the slow progression for first time
Yeah.
mom and all the things. Yep.
I explained everything. So I'm pushing right before she starts crowning, she turns.
Wow.
Then she starts crowning and they're like, we can see her eyebrows. And I just like threw my head back. I was like, is that all? Like
That's
I
all you
felt,
can see?
I mean, even with the epidural, like felt like I was splitting in half. And it was the guided pushing. It was really kind of intense, but I was also, when I wasn't pushing, was
Fine.
saying hi to everyone that walked in the room. I'm like, hey, do you think we didn't know if it was a boy or girl. So like, do you think it's a boy or girl? Having everyone you guess as they walked in. And spoiler alert, it's a girl. I said that at the beginning.
Yeah.
But we don't remember any, she was born, she was screaming before she was even out. And we don't remember anybody saying it's a girl. The first thing I remember is Andrew just crying, like, our daughter, our daughter. And they put her up on my chest and he got really mad because I still had my gown on. And he's like yelling at the nurses that she's supposed to be skin to skin. Anyway, so it was really sweet. I think a lot of the things I was fearful of with an epidural or medication and starting the interventions in birth did not come to fruition and was really, yeah, just felt the Lord's grace and mercy in that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a small first degree tear, but then pretty immediately the tone of the room changed of the midwife kind of got a little militant. I had some bleeding that they were trying to get under control and they gave me some Cytotec and Andrew was just praying for it to stop and it did. It stopped very quickly. They gave me Cytotec orally first and they were going to give me a suppository, but before they could even do that, the bleeding stopped. So I was really grateful for that. And we named her Liesel, which means God is my satisfaction. And it's our prayer for her, that she would be satisfied in the Lord.
It's beautiful. So how did your very first postpartum breastfeeding experience go?
Breastfeeding was, in one respect, I mean, great. She literally did not lose weight. She ate so much, but we had some latching problems. So even with some latching problems, she ate a ton. It was just kind of hurt for me. So I worked with the lactation consultants in the hospital. They were really helpful in teaching Andrew and my mom kind of how they could help me get her latched.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first little bit, it often took more than one person to get a really good latch, but that did not stop her from eating her heart out.
Sounds like it. So then postpartum was decent then?
Yeah, it was decent. I had a ton of swelling. So swelling was more my issue than pain from the tearing, or any of that. The tear was relatively minor. And yeah, early postpartum felt pretty good. For me, it's like 7 to 9 months when things started to get really hard.
Why is that?
So what we have learned, is that when babies kind of start weaning a little bit and just not taking as much milk, so like when they kind of start table food and actually start taking some calories from that, something about that drop in milk supply, kind of that hormonal change is just really, really hard for me. And so my older two, right around that time, has triggered a season of depression for me and kind of experiencing postpartum depression at that point. So that was kind of caught me off guard. You kind of feel like people talk about it more towards the early months,
Right?
sometime in the first 4-ish months. And for me, has not been the case. I'm tired and kind of have the baby blues or use a random crying spell, but in general feel like mentally great in that early period. And it's kind of more a little bit later. And it took us at least 2 babies to kind of figure out why that might be.
Yeah.
But
so did you just like let it level off and like even out, or did you like take any other action to try and like mitigate it?
So for the first one, I kind of let it go. because it wasn't immediately at 7 to 9 months. I was like, oh, this is depression. It
Yeah.
was a little bit more gradual. And I was like, well, she has more opinions. She needs more things. Like, that's hard. They start to crawl. You can't just carry them with you wherever you go at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually I did seek some counseling, and eventually after that, medication. And we kind of, for my second daughter, we did a similar thing. I was still meeting with my counselor and then ended up on some medication. And then for this most recent one, I've been on medication preemptively.
Gotcha. To like help head it off ahead of time.
Yeah. My middle is 3. So there are 4.5 years between the first two.
Okay.
We're dealing with my depression and all of that. And we're back and forth of like, do we want another kid? Is this something like I can handle? Then COVID, we actually ended up having 2 losses in the summer of 2020.
Mm.
And the first one was it wasn't until really like after the bleeding started that I kind of figured out, oh, I was pregnant.
Oh, you didn't know you were pregnant yet?
I didn't know I was pregnant yet. I had an inkling, but I hadn't gotten a positive test. I normally don't test positive until a little bit, like several days after my cycle would have come.
Oh, okay.
And so I hadn't gotten a positive test yet. So I was like, maybe, but then when I started bleeding, probably not. Then I bled for a long time and the bleeding was a little bit different than normal. But that one just kind of rolled off my back. It didn't really feel like, I guess, the need to grieve that for some reason. Probably because I never really knew. It was shocking. And then our second loss was around 9 weeks. And that one was really, really hard.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a really kind of long process. I bled longer for that loss than I did postpartum with my first.
Oh, wow.
That was really hard. Then at that point, I knew after that loss, like I wanted another kid, but it was really hard to say like, yeah, I want to try, because just the fear of another loss.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this on again, off again, try this week, not this week, try this month,
back and forth. Yeah.
Not next month. Yeah. Just kind of depending on how like emotionally I was able to handle that.
Yeah.
And so then found out I was pregnant in May of 2021 with our middle child, and very nervous to talk about it and to tell anyone about it, because we had told a good number of people about the second pregnancy that we had. And then it was just so hard to go back and tell them, well, actually, like, I'm not pregnant. And it was weird because it was COVID. And so it's like during that 2020. And so that was just kind of weird I had told some people and then didn't see them for a long time. And it's weird to just text somebody. Like, it felt weird to me to just like text them and be like, hey, I'm not actually pregnant anymore. So it was really hard for me to talk about being pregnant again, and stayed with the same practice for now because switching felt like a lot in the midst of everything. And they bumped up my dating ultrasound to as early as they could, just to kind of help provide some peace of mind for me. And so I was really thankful for that. And then around 9 weeks, I woke up to like a gush of blood, and I had a subchorionic hemorrhage.
But that probably wasn't your first thought when you woke up to a gush of blood.
That was definitely not my first thought. And so it was about 2 hours before they could see me at the practice. They said, you can go to the ER or you can wait and come in 2 hours. It's like, well, I'd rather go see the, people I at least kind of know rather than sit in an ER.
Right.
And so we get there, and when they found the heartbeat, my husband just lost it. It took me a minute to come around because I had just kind of braced myself for the worst. And so that pregnancy was really riddled with a lot of anxiety, really, really wanting to hold a baby and not be pregnant. Whereas I didn't mind being pregnant with my first. This one, I did not like being pregnant. When I had the bleeding, they told me to stop working out. And so I didn't really work out consistently through the pregnancy. And once you kind of stop in pregnancy, I feel like it's really hard to get that going again. So you don't have a habit. So I think that was part of and just physically really uncomfortable, mentally a lot of anxiety. I did do chiropractic this time, and that helped so much with the pubic bone pain.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you about that the first time if you had tried chiropractic care, but it didn't sound like you had.
No, I did not. So I did that, and that was like, oh, wow, this is so nice that I don't have to have this pain all the time or every time I move in a weird way.
Yeah.
She was funny, like because of where my placenta was, I could feel her really well on my belly. And so as we got towards the end, I could feel her being flipped posterior because I could
Oh.
feel like her little legs crossed in the front of my belly, and just did a lot of work to try to flip her.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be sitting in bed or sitting on the couch, and I'd feel my belly and I'd feel her legs cross. I'm like, dang it, I have to get up and move. And 36 hours later, she'd be flipped again. And so it was a lot of that, just being nervous about having another
OP
sunny side
baby.
up baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I did end up switching to the birth center in Atlanta around 20 weeks. And we talked a lot about just really wanting to have all the information and people that would, kind of help us, because I felt like somebody in that room probably had some inklings that our baby, with the first one was sunny side up, was posterior. And
That'd have been my first guess with all your back pain.
and like just with how slow things were going, and that somebody like surely had some thought, and that was never communicated to us until I was pushing.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't confirmed until then, but even, I don't know. So we just really wanted to have more of a team around us that would be kind of more proactive in communication.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I wanted an unmedicated birth again, to try for that. And just felt like that was going to be good to not even have the option of some of, the medications that the hospital has. We hired a team of doulas. So there's actually two doulas that work closely together, and you just really been to a lot of births. And so tried to have people around us that would, kind of help us more, and be
Mm-hmm.
willing to help us advocate for ourselves in some
Yeah.
ways, where it wouldn't fall on our shoulders quite as much to ask like all the questions of why might this be happening, or
Yeah, they would just be there to tell you.
that they would be more proactive in telling us. So we switched, and my care was great with them.
Well, take us to the labor. How did it start? When did it start? I'm thinking it didn't last as long as the first one.
It did not last 70 hours. No, it did not. But I had so much prodromal labor.
Yeah, second babies will do that to you.
Starting at about 36 weeks, I was bedridden with COVID. It was awful. And then 37 weeks, I started in 37 weeks every weekend, Friday night or Saturday night, I'd have prodromal labor like clockwork. And I'd have it for several hours. My sister was in town at that point, and so would text her, be like, hey, you'd be on watch to come watch our oldest. And it'd peter out and would have nothing all week. And then Friday or Saturday night, it'd start up again. And so
you were nice and relaxed. It was the weekend.
It was the weekend. Andrew was home. It was good. So this happens, get to my 40-week appointment, 40 and 1. It's on a Monday. And I so badly just wanted to trust the Lord's timing for me to hold this baby. But I was ready. I was not, especially after all the prodromal labor, I was like, I'm so ready. And kind of talking to the midwife about this, and she, told me, just because you're at a midwifery practice doesn't mean that you can't have any sort of help getting things going. If you want me to do a membrane sweep, we can do that. And I just broke down crying. I needed someone to tell me that it was okay to try to do more than eat pineapple to get labor going. And curb walking, of course. I was doing other things, but so she attempted a membrane sweep. Cervix was so closed, so posterior that she's like, I can't really do it.
She can't reach it.
I'm trying to irritate it, but nothing. So have nothing. Wednesday I had a little bit of bloody show, Andrew, I texted him. He freaked out. He like called me. He's like, "Do we need to be heading to the birth center?" It's like, "No, I think we're good. Like, I'll let you know." Again, real nervous about having a baby somewhere not at the hospital or birth center. And so, kind of by Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, I'm really starting to get anxious because in Georgia, you cannot have a baby at the birth center after 42 weeks. And so at 41 weeks, they start
Doing all the things.
a whole host of conversations of what all do you want to try? What do you, and I just feel that date like bearing down on me. And so start just really praying for her to come before 40 weeks. I don't want to have to make all these decisions. We did not know it was a her at this point either. We did not find out with her either gender, and have some friends praying for her to come before 41 weeks. I wake up on Saturday, which is 40 and 6, with real sporadic contractions. Again, I've had this before, the previous 4 weekends of contractions on a Saturday when Andrew's home. We go for a walk, I take a nap. As we're on our walk, I'm having to stop and kind of or really slow down for contractions, and kind of thinking, okay, like maybe this is it. Things have gotten a little bit more intense than they had any of the other weekends with prodromal labor. And early afternoon contractions completely stop. Like, are you serious? So I'm texting with our doulas, and they're like, you can either rest or you can like really work to try to get them back up. It's your call. And I decide I'm going to work. So I start doing the sideways stair step in our house, and we have a flight of stairs. And so we do that up and down, and then like power walk in a circle in our house and do that again, and did that for a while. And finally they started coming again. I was like, oh, praise the Lord. After the first labor of it being so long and the stop and the start, and just kind of get nervous. And can't remember if we were probably, I don't know what I remember watching something on TV, and I would kind of push my hands up against the couch and push my butt into the wall as like a counter pressure during contractions. And I don't know why that felt so good.
That's the counter pressure.
Yeah, but something about the wall was the best. And so eventually, I don't know what made me think, I think I had this one contraction where there was kind of like two on top of each other. I was kind of like, I think we need to go, start heading towards the birth center.
And what time is it now?
This is probably 6 p.m. So I've had contractions on and off for 12 hours. We call the midwife. I had Andrew call the midwife, and she's like, I want to talk to your wife. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody. Oh, we also had this real tension of back and forth of Andrew wanted to know whenever I was having a contraction because he wanted to time them. I did not want to know. I needed to be oblivious to time. So we came up with a system of me texting him a check mark every time I had a contraction because I was like, I just need to not think about this. And I need you not staring at me.
Yeah.
Just feeling like the pressure of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so we end up heading into the birth center. It's a 35-minute drive without traffic. There wasn't really any traffic. This is 7 p.m. I think probably 7 p.m. by the time we're on the road, and literally not a single contraction on the way.
Oh,
for like 35 minutes. And we get there, and the midwife texts us right before we get there. She's like, hey, call me when you get here. Do not ring the doorbell. Do not come in. Okay, this is weird. And she comes out. They'd had a group of teenagers had gotten into the birth center and vandalized it.
What?
And so they were cleaning that up and dealing with that. It was
how random is that?
Yeah, there had been a party upstairs. Because it's in a multi-use building anyways, it was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So it ended up being such a blessing of me not having contractions in that moment, because we were stuck outside of the birth center for probably 15-ish minutes, 15 to 20 minutes.
And a blessing that you didn't have what we call car tractions, because that's usually like the worst part is the ride when
Yes.
you're having these like back-to-back
Oh, yeah.
contractions.
I'm just like, yeah, easy breezy on the way.
Were you afraid you were going to
It
get
was,
sent home?
yes, like later, yes. Like once we got to triage, but like in that moment, I'm just like, what? Somebody broke in? You know, like kind of,
Yeah, that's so random.
even at the birth center, they put you in triage, or at least ours, like they'll put you in like triage for a little bit and get a strip.
Oh.
And I remember laying there just praying, like, Lord, please let me have contractions. Please let me have contractions because I do not want to go home.
Mm.
And she asked if I wanted to get checked, and I declined this time because I was like, I don't. Last time it was devastating. Every time they gave me a number, I couldn't
It
handle
was
it.
so defeating. Well,
Um,
that's so they'll let you stay without a check.
They will. So what happened was I had very few, like maybe like two contractions while on the monitor at triage. And the midwife said, I can't admit you right now, but I can tell you to go hang out in a room. Instead of you, I'll put you in a room for a little bit and we'll reassess later. And
Yeah.
so I was incredibly thankful for that. Literally, we got to the room and she starts giving us the room tour and the contractions come back. It was like my body was like, we're safe, like we're where we're supposed to be and we're safe. Had that weird thing again of like I felt like I couldn't show I was having a contraction while she was there. But yeah, like really, as soon as we got into that room, my body just, they started back up again, and was incredibly thankful she did not send us home because baby was born not that long afterwards.
Oh, nice. So did your doulas come at that point?
Yes, our doula showed up probably 30 minutes after we got there, or a few minutes after we got into the room. It wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And my go-to spot was laying over the ball in the shower with the hot water on my belly. I loved that so much. During contractions, I just tried to really focus on relaxing, and I would breathe out the word open
Mm.
every time. And then I got cold. We moved out of the shower for a little while. I think I moved into bed to try to warm up for a little bit on my side.
Did the shower not make you hot? I'm confused.
So it was just on my belly. So it was like my shoulders.
Oh, so like the rest of your body was getting sprinkled with water, but then it
Yes,
was
it was
just dry
just,
and making you cold. Oh, okay.
yes. And so I was really like, would get really cold and to go snuggle in bed and on my side and kind of rest for a little bit. And I really needed to focus at this point, but it wasn't like all consuming. Then my doula made me do like this lunge leaning over the ball. And that was a never ending contraction. I was like, nope, I'm out. Like, I'm not. And I really hated moving spots or positions because if I had a contraction while I was moving, it felt much harder to cope.
Mm-hmm.
And also, once I got to a position, it felt like it took me a contraction or two to really kind of get in my groove.
Yeah.
I sat backwards on the toilet. That was too intense. I could feel myself like
Yep. That's a really intense position.
really, like could feel my body like it was tensing up during the contractions instead of relaxing. And
Mm-hmm.
so went back to the shower, and things got a lot more intense. I started rubbing my face like during a contraction, like on anything, like on like there was a towel over like a little bench area, and I just like rubbed my face on it during the contraction. I don't know why that felt helpful, but kind of started to feel like I just couldn't do it anymore. And so we opted to go for a cervical check at that point, but for me to not know what it was. So they were going to tell Andrew and my doula so that they could kind of help guide where we were and
Mm-hmm.
like what to do next. And just feeling like, in my mind, I feel like I had forever to go.
Yeah.
And I had to move to the bed for the cervical check. And I was not about to have a contraction while I was moving. I sprinted from the shower and like dove into the bed like so fast. I had a contraction and then like immediately popped up and ran to the bed because I did like so badly did not want a contraction while I was moving. So we get there and get a cervical check. It's about 11:15 p.m. at this point, and I was at a 9.
But
So
you didn't know.
I didn't know this. No, but the midwife is like holding up her fingers to behind my head for Andrew and the doula to see. And so they kind of start like rolling in the baby cart
Getting all the stuff
and
ready.
getting all the stuff ready. And at that point, I opted for some nitrous oxide, which maybe I think was helpful. I didn't love the tube that they used to administer it. Like I had to like bite it to keep it in my mouth because I was on my hands and knees so much. And I felt like that made it harder to relax because it was kind of like biting to hold that in my mouth.
Yeah.
But I do think it was helpful. It at least gave me something else to think about in that moment. But contractions started getting like really intense. I stayed in the bed at this point. I was like on my hands and knees and then ended up on my side at some point. It's like pulling on the headboard. I just needed something to counter the intensity of like things pushing down. And so I'd like pull on the headboard and pretty tired at this point. And all of a sudden my water exploded. People talk about not being able to remember the sensations of labor. That one I can still feel 100%. Like literally just exploded. It was the craziest feeling.
Were you on the bed?
I was on the bed on my side. And at that point, like that was when I started vocalizing during contractions.
I'm surprised you weren't doing it before then. Wow.
Yes. And then started the spontaneous pushing. And about 10 minutes later, I reached down and there's her head. And
so your water breaking basically like put her down there and finished dilating you and everything all in one swoop.
Pretty much, I think. Yeah. And then she was born at 11:58 p.m. So that was 2 minutes before 41 weeks.
Just like they prayed for.
Yes. And it felt just like, yeah, just this really beautiful of like, God's like, I see you. And I hear what you're asking. And like, I care for you. It just felt like a really sweet moment from him. At this point it was several minutes before we learned that it was a girl. They like put her up on my chest and a few minutes later, Andrew's like, hey, did anyone check to see? And no. So I got to look and find out that it was a girl. And just, yeah, so sweet time. And her name is Everly, kind of based on Psalm 34 of your praise will ever be on my lips. Just felt like, even in like the really hard seasons of loss and darkness, kind of before her birth, the Lord was just teaching us to praise him continuously. And we loved that. And it took us a while to name her, like several hours, but we eventually came to that. And yeah, no tearing, was incredibly grateful for that. And the immediate postpartum was pretty easy. It was exhausted. I say easy, I mean, relatively, of course.
Right. Well,
there was no complications.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No complications. And I really loved the birth center that they let you take a nap and then kind of send you on your way. So we were home by like 7:30 the next morning.
Oh, nice.
Which was sweet.
Well, that's awesome. Got your unmedicated, shorter birth, much shorter. Like,
yes.
Yeah, which is the case for most second-time moms. I've had several first-time moms lately who've had really, really, really long labors, and it makes them hesitant to want to do it again. And I'm like, no. I promise the second time it will be shorter. It will not be this long. Like, your body will know how to do this a lot faster.
Yeah, so thankful for that.
Yeah. So did breastfeeding and postpartum go well with her too? Until the 7-month mark?
Yeah, and even after that, breastfeeding is like, I still, like my kids will still nurse. And I've nursed both of them until like 18 months or those two until about 18 months. So, but yeah, breastfeeding was good with her, not quite as easy and productive as the first, but it was good enough. I think we had a lip tie. She had like a lip tie that we had revised for her.
Did that help?
I think so. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to know, like, would it have changed without that? Just as they get bigger. Because she was probably 6 6-ish weeks before we had it revised. So she was a little bit older.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to know in the week or two after that, did she just have a growth spurt? And that, was what helped her latch better, or was it, getting that revised?
Yeah. My money's on the revision, but
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Baby number 3, who is only 5 months old. So we're still fresh, I think. Anything less than 6 months, I'm like, yeah, you just had a baby.
Yep.
So tell us about that story.
Yeah, we kind of were talking about, did we want a third? Kind of felt like the now or never time.
I heard that a few babies ago, now or never.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, clearly it wasn't never.
Yeah. I think because there's such a big gap between our first two, it's like, I don't want to be in the newborn stage in like toddler stage for her whole life, my oldest.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about that. I had thought that I had already ovulated that month. Maybe I had, I don't know. So we didn't think we were like actually going to get pregnant. And about 3 days later, my sister was like, hey, you want to run a half marathon? I was like, absolutely. Yes, I do. So we're like, okay, we'll put that on hold until after the half marathon. We'll try in the fall. No. I was like, yeah. So I was pregnant very early. Found out early with this one. My cycle at this point were like 23 days, insanely short.
Oh, they were quick.
But the pregnancy with her was much easier physically. There was some anxiety, but not as crippling as with the second.
Right.
I was more just overwhelmed with the thought of adding a third kid, of like, how is this going to go? My oldest had just started elementary school. She had been in a half-day kindergarten, and now she was in a full-day first grade. And we were still kind of adjusting to that. So
yeah,
it just felt like a lot. We stayed with the birth center that we had. My second one was born at, and then had the same doulas. Texted them. I was like, hey, do you have a discount for repeats?
I do. I have a discount for repeats.
Yes, they did, but it was a joke. But yeah, so that was fun. We really liked that team, and we did that again.
Great. So not as much of the SPD this time?
None of that again. I think the chiropractic care was incredibly helpful. Was able to stay more active during this pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Did not run during this pregnancy, but was more active. And yeah, just in general was much easier than the second.
Good. Well, you're like, been there, done that, done this a few times now, know what I'm doing.
Yep.
So did we have the weeks, or I guess I should say weekends, of prodromal labor this time?
I think I only had prodromal labor once. And it was right as a snowstorm was getting ready to come through Atlanta. So she was
lovely.
due in January. Yeah, I felt like I kind of like sense that she might come a little bit early. I also think the dates were wrong that they used, because they do it based on your last period.
So they had a further out date than you did. Yeah.
And since they were only 23 days. So she came a little bit early on their timeline, but was actually late on my timeline. So, but yeah, I think I only had one prodromal labor, which was surprising. So it was much less this time. My labor was in general like pretty similar to the second. Woke up with kind of inconsistent contractions. Told Andrew like, hey, you might want to stay home from work today, or work from home today. This feels kind of real. Labor stalled out.
No, like it does with you. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know what my deal is. She was posterior. It's when we got to the birth center. So, and I knew she had been flipping. I had this baby was breech at like 38 weeks. She would be like breech one day and head down the next day. And I could tell based on where the hiccups were of like, she would just like flip so much, and it was so weird. And I was a little bit nervous about her positioning, but the midwives and doulas were not nervous because she was able to move so well.
Yeah. They probably figured when it was time, she'll swim downward.
Do what she needed to do. Yeah. Anyways, so but go for a walk And like previously, at least when I've gone for a walk, contractions have picked up. Not at all this time. Literally talking on the phone to my best friend and nothing, like no contractions. I think was actually listening to one of your podcasts at some point on that walk. And so I come in and I tell Andrew, like, yeah, probably just some prodromal labor, like, not sure this is it. Go take a shower. And at some point after the shower, contractions kind of come back. I was like, that's kind of intense. This is weird. So I go back and I probably told them around 1:15 that I didn't think this was it. And I go back up there at like 1:45 and I'm like, hey, actually, maybe this is. Like, I've started having contractions again, and these are much more intense.
Yeah.
And we kind of start getting ready to head into the birth center. We do a side lying release at home to try to get her moving because I'm pretty sure she's posterior at this point. And we head for the birth center. I prayed for contractions in the car, which feels like a weird thing to say, but based on
Did you have
time,
them this time?
I had them. They were very mild, and so was able to just kind of like generally breathe through them. But yeah, it was still it was a very pleasant car ride.
It sounds like just when your body moves locations that your labor's just like pause. Like they're just like you press the pause button until you get relaxed again.
It did not for the first one with the back labor, but for the second two, it for sure did.
Well, for the first one though, you didn't really. Oh, well, you did go home at the same time. Yeah.
It was like a 5-minute car ride, and I was like, I don't ever want to do this again. But so we get to the birth center probably like 4:15ish, and I decide to get checked and triaged this time, but I don't want to know because the more I thought about the birth of my second, I was like, I'm really curious, like how dilated I was at that point, like when I got to the birth center.
Yeah.
Was like most of it happening afterwards, or did some happen before? And so I was like,
yeah.
So I wanted to get checked, but had her tell Andrew outside the room. And so I was what she said, a 5, but a stretchy 7.
Nice.
Like, and she's like, I don't know what that means. In his notes.
That means there's just a 5, but if she puts her fingers in there, moves them around, she can stretch you to a 7.
Yeah. So that was a funny,
let's call it a 6.
Yeah. So she, as we're getting checked into the room, she looks at me and says, so I've heard you're really quiet during birth, and that you're really quiet and then you have a baby. Please come tell me if you feel any pressure.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like, kind of made me chuckle. I was like, I don't know like how I got this reputation, but
well, if you weren't vocalizing until your water broke last time, then I would agree with her that you're a quiet laborer.
Pretty soon after that, one of my best friends, she was actually able to come to the birth, and she gets there. And then soon after that, my doula arrives and did another side lying release because the midwife did confirm that she was posterior. And I could kind of start to feel it, like, this feels weird, like in my bones, like in in my back, like my hip bones, like I could feel that. Yeah, it was a little bit more, I wouldn't even say like painful, but just like it felt weird. Like it was a very weird sensation. But not like a great sensation. So do another side lying release, do hip circles on the ball, a modified like downward dog, trying to, get her to flip. After all that, could still feel contractions or in my back a little bit, and go and begrudgingly do a couple contractions on the toilet. And this birth, like, it was so weird. Like, it was such a joyous atmosphere. My previous birth, the middle one, it was like, I loved that birth, but it was a very kind of intense of like, I felt very much in labor land, like pretty soon, like as contractions were coming readily, like even between contractions, like wasn't super with it. But this, I would, breathe through a contraction and then just like pop up and feel totally fine and engage with, people. And we were just kind of having my friend there was really sweet and just talking, catching up, joking about not wanting to go sit on the toilet, between contractions. And so did a couple contractions on the toilet, wanted to do, and then kind of started to feel a little bit nauseous. and immediately called for Zofran. Like, I am all for the unmedicated births, but I am not here for any nausea.
Oh,
It is my least like favorite thing in the world.
girl, I feel you.
So immediately call for the Zofran, and get the TENS unit hooked up on my back. TENS unit's great. Again, didn't really want to get in the water this time. And water birth is a thing at the birth center, but that was just like, it has never appealed to me to be in the tub. Go to kind of work through a couple different positions and go to the bathroom again at like 7:40, and had this weird feeling of the need for my hips to be open. And so like not sitting on the ball, not in any sort of like squatted positioning, but more like a downward dog, kind of where the fronts of my hips could be like more extended, which felt like was kind of a weird thing that I hadn't felt before. And they came in and were checking her with the Doppler, and they left. And my doula says I grunted with a contraction.
We know what that means for you.
At 8:06, and I'm leaning over the bed, and she sprints out of the room and brings them back in. So 8:06, 8:14, I'm like still standing, kind of leaning over the bed. My water breaks. And that is the only moment of this labor that I would kind of consider as painful. I like once my water broke. Well, so I guess I had reached down at some point and I felt, I was like, my water's still there. Like, this is weird. That doesn't feel like a baby's head. And so then it broke. And afterwards, there's a video of me just saying, ow, 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 ow. And then she was born 2 minutes later. And I got to catch her. I loved that I got to catch her. That was just a really fun thing that when my parenting journey started, would have never guessed that I would have caught a baby.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just something sweet about being the one to kind of like welcome them into the world.
Yeah.
So that was really sweet. My friend got to cut the cord because we know Andrew wants to have no part in any of the
Figured he wouldn't want to be a part of that.
No, he stays upstream, is what he calls it. He's like right in my face. And not in a bad way, but like in,
right. A comforting way.
In a very comforting way. Yeah. So it was just, such a joyful labor kind of experience. And dare I say, like almost like fun in some ways.
Yeah.
So we were fairly certain, we knew it was a girl this time. We did find out. We were fairly certain we were going to name her Elliot. And we're kind of running through a lot of different middle names. And we ended up on Elliot Joy. Because, just bringing her into the world was joyful, and praying that she brings, joy to those around her through Christ. And so it was a sweet actual labor experience. But that immediate postpartum was not my favorite. I ended up with a hemorrhage and had to have 3 different medications to try to stop the bleeding. And I feel like one of the things that I've kind of learned through this is like, you can go back and question and try to figure out, if I had done this differently, or if we had done that differently, would it have ended up the same? And just really trying to trust that the Lord has given you the story that he's given you for a reason.
Yeah.
And not to say that you can't learn from that and do things differently, but I think, especially after my first birth, I was really like, oh, I wish I had done all this differently. And then even kind of with this postpartum of like, I wish I had asked these questions, or, gotten up to pee more or whatever. And just like that's living in a space of anxiety, and that's not what the Lord like calls us to. And he's sovereign over everything, and even our mistakes. And so I think kind of some of this, thinking about this postpartum period was really just like coming to grips with like none of this was out of his control. And he knew everything, and he protected us, and trusting him in that. I ended up, I had a shot of Pitocin. That didn't work. They gave me Cytotec, so they offered me Cytotec and another medication. I can't remember the name of that one, but we opted on Cytotec because that's what I had taken with the
Of
hemorrhage with
course.
lethal. We're like, oh, we know this works. We know that I don't have like adverse effects, really adverse reactions to this.
Yeah.
Uh-uh. It was, they said like, they said that they told me before I took it, Cytotec can give you a fever. I've never had a fever like this in my life. It was, I mean, I couldn't hold my baby. I was shaking so badly.
How
Um,
quickly did it come on?
5 minutes after taking it.
Oh man.
Like it was so intense. And Andrew's holding the baby and dozing in and out of sleep while the baby was sleeping. And I couldn't even like reach, like get out from underneath the blankets to reach for my phone. But it was really crazy. And so that's when I wish I'd gotten up to go to the bathroom more, kind of during that period to see if that had helped.
Stop the
Kind
bleeding,
of
you mean?
yeah, because they talked
Yeah.
about sometimes like if your bladder's full, it can't contract how it's supposed to, or I
Yeah.
don't know how that works, but
Yeah.
something about peeing supposed to help. Um,
Yes, it is.
anyways, the side effect didn't stop it. They even after that still had ended up with the other medication, and they're like, we're going to give this 2 hours or something like that to work, and after that we'll have to do a manual kind of
Scraping.
scraping. And
Oh,
I was like,
please no.
like, please no. Like to the point, like, and that seemed so awful to me to the point where I was talking to Andrew, like, if that's our option, like, I might, like, if that's what they recommend, I might want to transfer and have them to the hospital and have them put me under. Like, I don't know that I can
Handle
handle
that.
that. And this is like 2 a.m. And I have friends that live literally on the other side of the world. So it was daytime for them, and texting them, please pray for this to stop. And at about 2:30, they came in, and a small piece of membrane came out when they were doing the fundal massage.
Mm.
And I probably had about 15 minutes left before they were going to recommend the scraping.
Mm-hmm.
So that I was incredibly grateful to not have to do that.
So was that what was causing the bleeding? Was that little piece that was left in there?
They think so. I still had like some small trickles after that, and I got up and went to the bathroom. Had me then like, okay, get up every 30 minutes and go to the bathroom. And I
Yeah.
did that, and then eventually like it stopped. And so they think it was probably that some combo between that small piece and not and needing to go to the bathroom more.
Yeah.
But I will say, when I debriefed all of this, so my doula had left at that point. When I debriefed with her, she looked at me and said, "Why didn't you call me to come back?"
Mm.
So I just like PSA to everybody: if anything happens after your doula leaves, call them. Like, they'll come back or they'll talk you through it.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do. And it just never occurred to me. Never occurred to me
To
to.
call her back. I guess when you're telling the story, I didn't realize that she wasn't there anymore.
Yes, yeah, she had left because at first everything was fine. It was kind of a little bit more. I think they assumed the pitocin was going to work, and giving that a couple hours, and yeah, so she had left. But it just never occurred to me to call her, and another set of hands would have been really helpful in that situation.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my PSA.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I don't think that's ever happened to any of my clients. Like that something like that happened after I left, to my knowledge. I usually try and stay until I feel like everybody's good and settled
Mhm.
and like everything's kosher, which she probably thought everything was kosher at that point. You know.
Yeah, because I had never had, or I guess with the previous birth, you hadn't had any issues with it.
Yeah.
With the first birth, they just thought it was because it had been you had been contractions for 70
Yeah.
hours. Yeah, and so yeah, she stayed until she was there 2.5 hours after the baby was born.
Yeah.
And they weren't like super concerned about bleeding at that point. It was at some point
Yeah.
afterwards that it was like, okay, this hasn't slowed down as much as we would like.
Yeah. Let's get up and pee.
Yep. I
Which
needed
is
that. I
hard to
needed that time.
do. It's hard to do after you have the baby, is to go
And
pee.
I think, yeah, and it wasn't, and I think some of it was I was having trouble emptying my bladder all the way, even when I would go to the bathroom.
Oh,
I
like
think
couldn't get it all out.
I think like looking back was like, oh, I probably, because once I got home, I was having trouble doing that. I
Mm-hmm.
realized. And so I was like, that probably was
Part of it.
some of what was, yeah, some of what was happening there.
Yeah.
because I can't feel when I need to pee right after I have a baby.
No, that sensation just goes away.
It's the weirdest thing. It's more like, oh, it's been 3 hours since I've been to the bathroom. I should probably go, like, or whatever
all
time.
day. I remember my husband would come home from work after after paternity leave was over, and he would be like, "Have you peed today?" And I'm like, nope, I don't think I have," because I can't feel it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up here, between all of your experiences, is there anything that you haven't shared that you want to share in terms of what you feel like the Lord taught you through these times, and or any advice you'd want to give to parents out there?
I think I've kind of touched on some of what he's taught me, but I think it's one of like my birth stories, labor, postpartums are like some of the like one of the places I can most specifically point to, like God answering specific prayers that we prayed, and then prayers that we didn't even know to pray. One specific thing that's like kind of funny that comes to mind is like my first daughter, her head was 99th percentile, which may have been part of the problem too there. But like we prayed for an average sized head for my second baby, and it was like right at 50th percentile.
Oh, nice.
And so just like really things that seem really trivial like that, like he cares to answer those, and not always the way that we want, but he hears, and I think he can show you some like really specific ways he hears you, and is with you. And I just think a heart, like pray for a humble heart, just trusting the Lord. And I think it's really, really important to have a care team that you trust, around you. I know for a lot of people that has been doulas and midwives that are believers. For me, that was not the case. None of my care team are believers, but we really trusted them, and it became like, and they really wanted us to express our faith in that space. And it also became like a way, to share Christ with them.
Yeah.
But I think, just having a team you can trust, is really important, and more important than I would have said from like the start of my first birth. I think I would have said that, oh, I can advocate for myself and do all the things, and like you can, but it's so much easier when you have a team around you that has the same goals, and then when they say something like, hey, we think you should do X, like you're like, okay, you can talk through that, but you trust what they're saying a lot more, rather than feeling like you have to push against them a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that a lot, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Mary Kathryn, for coming on here and sharing all of these stories with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
It's been great. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram, or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.
Okay, it's funny, like listening to somebody, you have a picture in their mind of what they look like, and I don't know. I pictured you with blonde hair
I
for
don't
some
look
reason.
anything like that, I'm sure.
Well, you just don't have blonde hair, so.
I don't have blonde hair. 3 of my kids have blonde hair, but I don't have blonde hair.